All right, let's dive right into this explainer by looking at a word we all know and use today: vandalism. By definition, it's an action involving the deliberate destruction of public or private property. But we really have to ask ourselves, where does this word actually come from, and is the history behind it fair?
Well, the origin of that word actually goes all the way back to one incredibly infamous event, the 455 AD sack of Rome. The city was systematically looted by a Germanic tribe known to history as the Vandals. And this single devastating event forever branded them as mindless destroyers in the eyes of the world. It's an image that has survived for centuries, literally defining an entire group of people by one violent act. But today, we're going to bust that myth right wide open. We're going to chart the epic, complex journey of who the Vandals truly were. Because, far from being just some chaotic mob of marauders, they evolved from mysterious origins in Central Europe into a highly organized Mediterranean superpower. Their story is one of survival, adaptation, and immense ambition. So here's our roadmap for tracking this massive migration. 1. Beyond the word vandalism. 2. Origins and early migrations. 3. Crossing the frozen Rhine. 4. Carthage and sacking Rome. And finally, 5. The fall of the Vandals.
Kicking things off with Part 1, Origins and Early Migrations, Searching for a Homeland.
You know, for the longest time, 19th century nationalists really pushed this idea that the Vandals originated from Scandinavia. But modern archaeological evidence tells a completely different story. The evidence actually points to the Przeworsk culture, located in modern-day Poland. They weren't just some purely isolated group. They were a diverse, multi-ethnic mix combining Slavic, Pomeranian, and Illyrian cultural influences. It's like a giant puzzle of different cultures. They were a complex confederation from the very beginning. As their population grew and expanded, the Vandals actually split into two main branches, the Salinki and the Hasdingi. By the 2nd century, the Hasdingi moved south toward the Danube River. They definitely clashed with the Roman Empire during the Marcomannic Wars, but they weren't just fighting, they were negotiating. Eventually, they settled in regions like Dacia and Pannonia. They were even officially granted lands by Emperor Constantine the Great, specifically because Rome wanted to use them as buffer states against other hostile tribes. They were slowly integrating right into the edges of the Roman world, acting as border guards and allies. And if you want to know just how deeply they integrated, look no further than Flavius Stilicho. He was a brilliant Roman military commander and a masterful statesman who won massive victories for Rome. And his father was a Vandal. Despite facing serious prejudice from political rivals in the Roman court who eventually conspired against him, Stilicho's whole career proves that Vandals had woven themselves into the very fabric of high Roman society long before the Great Migrations even began.
Moving on to Part 2, Crossing the Frozen Rhine, a Desperate Migration.
But, of course, that relatively stable existence as Roman allies just wasn't going to last. By the turn of the 5th century, immense pressure from invading Huns in the east forced King Godegisol to lead his people on a desperate journey westward. 20,000. Just take a second and let that number sink in. 20,000 dead. In the ancient world, that is an absolutely apocalyptic number for a single tribe to lose. This represents the Vandal lives lost in a brutal, devastating clash with the Franks as they pushed west. King Godegisol himself actually died in this battle. The Vandals were nearly wiped out completely, but they were finally saved at the last possible moment by their allies, the Alans, who helped them turn the tide and survive.
So, driven from Pannonia, their epic journey really peaks on this one unbelievable date, December 31st, 406. Picture this. On the very last day of the year, fleeing the terrifying advance of the Huns, they reached the mighty Rhine River, and it had frozen completely solid. They literally just walked right over the ice into Roman Gaul. From there, they pushed relentlessly southward, eventually crossing the snowy peaks of the Pyrenees and entering Spain by October of 409.
Okay, Part 3, Carthage and sacking Rome, building an empire.
After settling in Spain as allies of Rome, they briefly left their mark on the region of Andalusia, a name which, by the way, originally derived from Vandalusia. But a brilliant new king named Geiserek takes power in 427, and he sets his sights on a much richer prize across the sea. In 429 AD, King Geiserek pulls off this absolutely astonishing logistical feat. He managed to move a massive force of 80,000 men across the Strait of Gibraltar into North Africa. To put that into perspective, that is an entire modern football stadium of people, supplies, and families moved across the open sea in the 5th century. This was no mindless horde. This was a highly coordinated migration led by a strategic genius.
Once they hit North Africa, they laid siege to cities like Hippo Regius. Fun fact, that's actually where the famous philosopher St. Augustine passed away during the blockade. But their ultimate triumph came in 439 AD, when Gaiseric captured the absolute jewel of North Africa, Carthage. By taking Carthage, the Vandals completely transformed. They went from wandering, displaced tribes into a settled, wealthy kingdom sitting right on top of Rome's vital grain supply. And get this, they didn't just stop at land. Gaiseric built a formidable fleet from the shipyards of Carthage, launching naval conquests that took Sicily, Sardinia, Corsica, and the Balearic Islands. They effectively severed Rome's control over the Mediterranean Sea. They were a highly sophisticated naval empire now. In 468, they literally destroyed a massive Eastern Roman fleet that was sent to conquer them. Just incredible. But, it wasn't all smooth sailing. Their kingdom was heavily plagued by internal religious strife. The Vandals practiced Arian Christianity, which is the belief that Jesus was specially created and closest to God, but not strictly equal to the Father. This directly clashed with the mainstream Catholic beliefs of their Roman subjects in North Africa. This theological divide caused some serious friction, and under successive kings like Huneric, it resulted in fierce, documented persecutions of the Catholic majority. And this brings us right back to 455 AD, the event that completely defined their legacy. Gaiseric's powerful fleet arrived at the gates of Rome itself. According to historical records, Pope Leo the Great actually rode out to meet Gaiseric, pleading with him to spare the residents. Gaiseric agreed not to burn the city to the ground or massacre the people, but the Vandals still systematically and efficiently looted the wealth of Rome. They hauled its treasures back to Carthage, and in doing so permanently sealed their reputation in history as, Vandals.
Which leads us to part 4. The fall of the Vandals, a rapid collapse. King Gaiseric had ruled for decades, transforming his people into an absolute powerhouse. But after his death in 477, the Vandal-Alan kingdom began to stagnate. Successive rulers really struggled with internal religious conflicts and shifting alliances. And when the fall finally came, it was lightning fast. In 533 AD, the Eastern Roman or Byzantine Empire sent their legendary general Belisarius to reclaim North Africa. In back-to-back decisive battles at Ad Decium and Tokomon, Belisarius completely crushed the Vandal forces. Just 1 year later, in 534 AD, the final Vandal king, Gilimer, surrendered. And just like that, the formidable Vandal kingdom was erased from the map entirely.
So taking a step back and looking at everything we just talked about, their epic survival against the Huns, their deep political integration into the Roman world, pulling off the brilliant logistics of moving 80,000 people across the sea, and their undeniable Mediterranean naval dominance. What do you guys think? Does the modern word vandalism really do justice to their incredible story? Or is it just the ultimate proof that history is written entirely by the victors? It is definitely something to chew on the next time you hear that word tossed around. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and remember, always keep questioning what you think you know.